How many times have you heard me talk about the importance of meal planning? It's one of the most underrated, underused health tools. I recommend it all the time, whether it's on this show or when I'm guesting on other shows. Can't believe I'm finally getting to actually talk to someone that has made meal prepping their business. Allison Schaaf is the founder and CEO of Prep Dish. It's a meal planning service that helps busy individuals and families save time while enjoying healthy, stress-free meals. And Allison is a trained chef and she's a dietitian. She also is someone who's struggled to have kids and has finally now has 4 kids. She had quite a journey getting to be a mom, and she shares that as well, which I found very moving. Welcome to Everyday Ancestral. I'm your host, James Barry, with today's guest, Allison Schaaf. What actually got you into going down the path of becoming a chef and studying nutrition?
Yeah, it's interesting. Growing up, I was always involved in sports. And I think also my mom wasn't that into cooking. So I think that kind of got me into cooking. Like I can remember on Sundays, she wouldn't want to have lunch right after church. So I started kind of taking on that role just because I was hungry. And I'm like, okay, let's. So I kind of took over in high school doing part of the cooking, just I guess practically. But I did have some grandmothers. Both my grandmothers are wonderful cooks. So I think I was always inspired by them and just had an interest with being in the kitchen. Even in junior high, I created a catering company, actually making cookies. So maybe not the healthiest, but I remember selling them to my dad for his board meetings. And it's kind of a double win for me because not only did my dad pay for the ingredients, but then he also paid for whatever price I put on the price list. So that was one of my.
That's so great. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
And were you an only child or did you have siblings?
No, I had 2 younger sisters. So I was the oldest child. So I think also, kind of liked to help out in that sense too. But yeah, I got inspired to go on to culinary school. I found a great program that combined culinary and nutrition. And I guess for me, I've just never quite understood how either of those can stand alone. If you're going to go into culinary arts and spend all this time cooking, wouldn't you want it to be something that's going to nourish your body and make you feel better? Not just in taste, yes, but also in like how your body feels. And then, same thing with nutrition. How can you talk about nutrition without knowing how to cook? No one's going to long-term follow nutrition advice unless it tastes good. So to me, it's just like the two fields can't be separated, but they often are, mostly are. So, I always kind of went down that path, but also had this like entrepreneurial streak to me always. Like I was always creating businesses when I was little and knew that I was going to kind of set out on my own path as well, but just had the interest in that culinary and nutrition piece. So that's
what
how
school did you go to?
Johnson and Wales. It's one of the main culinary schools. But yeah, it gave you the requirements to go on and become a dietitian. I went to Tufts then for grad school. And they had a nutrition communications degree, which was nice because I knew I wanted to do a different path. And so I think having that communications piece just kind of gave me a better background to set off and be more creative in what I did.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I went to a program in New York that also fused nutrition with culinary skills.
Uh-huh.
And it's always been the same thing as what you said too. It's like, why are those separated? But yet they really are. It's some culinary school.
No, I did internships at some famous spas, and I remember going in like, oh, this is going to be so great. These chefs are going to be so into it. And I always would find there were 1 or 2 in the kitchen that they were into it. But for most of the people, even at a health spa, it was just a job. Like they were a chef and it was a job. And yeah, maybe there were some requirements they needed to follow, so they did, but they didn't have that passion. And I was surprised at the lack of I guess I was just expecting so much more.
And you got to cook for you mentioned a rock star. Do you get to share who that is at this point?
Oh gosh. I don't know. Probably not. I've never shared before. I don't think they would mind since it's been so many years, but I've lost touch. But yes, it was a famous drummer, and oh gosh, him and his wife were so sweet. And it was funny because they would be on the road and then he would get back and he would always be so grateful. He was one of my most grateful clients, I think, because, after being on the road and all that, he was just excited to get back to some nice, healthy home cooking. And, but yeah, very down to earth. And I think, with my personal chef services, I wouldn't be there physically cooking the food. I'd more do the meal prep, right? So I think, and they liked that. Like, I kind of would set them up, but then they would have these like home cooked meals that the wife would prepare. So
Yeah, that's great. Now, what sort of diet did you fall into right out of culinary school, and then what did you fall into prior to starting the business? Because I know your business actually was gluten free. You were doing gluten free and paleo, right? But did you come
yeah.
out of school already doing that?
No, I actually myself was not doing any of that. And then, but when I got into cooking for clients, having that dietitian background definitely set me apart from other personal chefs. So I really leaned heavily into that. I started working with a lot of functional medicine doctors. And through that work, I saw how important, a paleo diet or an autoimmune protocol, especially like short term, could be to getting people on the path to health. So that kind of got me inspired to do more of the dietary things. But then I think it was like halfway through the personal chef journey, my sister removed gluten from her diet because she was getting just terribly sick. This was years before it was kind of a trendy, or I mean, I shouldn't say trendy because it's a real thing. But before it was so mainstream, and she got better like almost immediately. And it took a few years, but a few years later, I did an elimination diet. I really didn't have a specific issue that I had recognized or anything. But when I removed gluten from my diet, I think it's for 30 days, when I tried to bring it back in, it was just very clear that gluten did not agree with my body. And over kind of the next year, it was actually my husband now, we were dating, and he came back home with me and looked at all these photos. And he's like, that doesn't look like you. And I'd never put it together, but eating gluten versus not eating gluten, Allison looked very different. There was a puffiness to my face, so much so that he almost didn't recognize me. So
Wow, yeah, that's really powerful. So, just in case some people don't know what an elimination diet is, do you want to
yeah.
just share what you removed from your diet?
Yeah, so gosh, I don't remember the specific one I did. And I do. So when you're doing an elimination diet, the idea is, you kind of eliminate a bunch of items that might be causing inflammation, or if you have a specific issue, and then keeping them out for a set amount of time, usually about 30 days, and then reintroducing like one at a time over a period. I do recommend it's something that's really helpful to do with a dietitian or a functional medicine doctor, practitioner of some sort, just to kind of help guide you through it. Because I didn't have an exact issue, I don't know that I followed a very specific protocol that closely.
Did you
But I
just
remember
remove
living
some of the basics?
yeah, I mean, I think I did like no sugar, no gluten, no dairy, no grains. I think I did, sort of like a paleo type diet. I don't know if I did full autoimmune protocol or not. I can't remember. It's been so long ago. But I know that the only one that had the huge impact on me was the gluten. And I had done some sort of blood test back then. There were a bunch of blood tests that people could do. So
Now skip ahead though, when you have quite the story around conceiving and trying to conceive,
yes.
um, which inspired you to start a website. Would you want to just share what that website is so people can go and check out your story? It
Yeah.
I'll preface that it's primarily around miscarriages, but really powerful essays that you wrote just about your experiences. What website can they go to learn and check that out?
Yeah, it's miscarriagehopedesk.org. And it outlines my journey to building my family. And yeah, we kind of went into it, my husband and I, just not expecting any sort of issues. I thought we were both healthy. I mean, we were. And gosh, we just started running into this issue of I had one miscarriage and then another and then another. And it just kind of kept going on. And in total, I had, 6 losses and was, just in shock after each one, just totally unexpected. Even it's interesting, like even after have, after you've had a few, it's kind of like you're more likely, it's statistically to, continue having them. But each one was just still like so shocking and so unexpected. And I felt like I was, quote unquote, doing all the right things. And man, it was a very, quite the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I that's kind of where I was going is that so many times, like people in the field, particularly who are, helping other people get healthy, who understand nutrition, or you think you're doing the right things. That how could this be happening to you? So I imagine it was almost, it felt almost like you were drowning even more, because it's like I should know, I should be able to fix this, and yet, as your journey showed, it wasn't always just about the nutrition, clearly.
Yeah, no, and it was, I can't even sit here today and say that I know for sure, it was this, and this. That's the struggle with infertility is there's so many things that can be impacting it. And a 50-50 thing, right? Like there's an egg and a sperm and both are contributing 50%. So there's so many things that can be going on. I did figure out I have an autoimmune condition, like a blood clotting disorder. So I was on blood thinners for most of my pregnancies, but still went on to have miscarriages, even on the many of the pregnancies where I was on blood thinners. So I do think there were, additional things that were going on as well.
Well, and when people go to the site and learn more about you, what you wrote, they'll learn you did adopt a child initially, and then birthed another child, and then did you just adopt your recent two children?
Yes. So in total, we have 3 adoptions and 1 biological. So 4
Yeah,
kids
that's
total.
that's so powerful.
Mhm.
But I'm just curious, does does your journey with getting pregnant and then adopting, has that shifted your how you eat as a family and as individuals?
Gosh, the biggest way that it's shifted how I eat, I don't know that my fertility journey, I think in some ways with the fertility stuff, I actually learned to, well, now sort of loosen up because while I was going through it, I was just so concerned that it was something diet related because that's where my head goes. So I think in some ways I've maybe loosened up a little bit on that side of things. I mean, the biggest thing for me now that we have kids is I just feel so strongly about the power of like sitting down for a family meal and that, yes, the food being healthy and whole foods based and all these things is important. But just as important is that we all sit down and that we're calm when we eat. And sometimes I do look back and be like, well, was I like eating in front of my computer? So was I eating the right things, but in the wrong way? Like it's so powerful now to sit down and, with 4 kids, it's not always like calm, but, to sit down and take a deep breath. And sometimes my Oura ring will say that I was relaxed. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is what it is, right? Is sitting down, enjoying a meal with each other and connecting. And I think that's kind of the power in food and why food is nutritious is not just the nutrients it's providing, but it's the connection.
Yeah, the how, right? How not only
Mhm.
how it's prepared, but how you eat it. Now, so many families though they struggle with the time and decision fatigue around meals,
Mhm.
and I know that's why you built your company. But do you have I don't know, what's your approach to bringing like the simplicity without sacrificing nourishment?
Gosh, well, with simplicity, I think it's one realizing like at the core, a healthy meal doesn't need to be fancy. And in fact, the fancier I try and get, my kids may or may not push back a little bit, but the simpler meals they don't push back on. So, like a salt and pepper chicken drumstick, like always a winner, and that's salt and pepper. So just remind myself that, not every, I would love to have every meal be a little more gourmet, but sometimes the simple ones go over just as well. And, usually wanting to mix up the flavor combinations and do fancier sauces, that's more for me. So I think that's the first thing. And like starting there with a simple meal, that's just like a great place to start because if you start trying to do too much, it makes it too easy to fall off and like be like unmotivated to do it.
Mm. Now, you've talked about food as medicine,
Mhm.
and I think very much you exemplify that as during your journey of trying to get pregnant and through that whole process. Well, what do you think modern parents are overlooking with current modern diets versus ancestral diets?
Oh gosh, that is such a question. I think part of it is just focus, like thinking like what they're doing. Like, I don't know how to say this like in a nice way, but thinking what they're doing is just, it's been normalized, right? Like, oh, well, this is what a snack comes out of a package. My kids do not eat any snacks that come out of like a little tiny package. Like that's, if you just start there, to me, that's like the simple place to just like give them a piece of fruit, chop up a vegetable. Those are our two options for snacks in our house. Like we don't have anything that comes from a package. And there's nothing inconvenient about eating a piece of fruit, right? Like an apple, an orange, a banana. Those are convenience foods too. So I think part of it's just like shifting your mindset a little bit around like what's convenient. And like even if we're in the car, like we can still take fruit. Like we don't need these packaged items. So I think part of it's just taking a step back and realizing like how far away we've come from what we should be eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you were like, you make everything. You're not saying you have to make everything from scratch. It's like, because I think that's a trap everyone gets into, right? They think, oh, I have to be like a homesteader and I have to make everything from scratch. But I've got, a business, I've got a husband, I've got kids, and I'm just stressed out. But you're just trying to simplify and say like, no, just cut up some cheese, have some fruit,
Yes.
cut up some vegetables. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I see people, they'll do these like, they'll want to create these like healthy muffins and healthy cookies and they add shredded vegetables. And I'm like, that's fine and that's fun. And if you want to get your kids in the kitchen, do that, that's great. But let's just start with the basics of, slicing some cheese and some fruit and there's your snack, And it's like you kind of go overboard in the other direction and it's like kind of missing the point.
Has becoming a parent changed how you eat, like, and how you even look at food? Do you think like becoming a parent has actually simplified your process of eating and how you look at food?
It's added a little more structure. So my husband and I were always good about coming together, and he's also an entrepreneur and works from home. So we were always good at usually breakfast and dinner coming together and eating. With kids, it's a lot more, okay, I especially have one, and it's like, if we do not eat dinner at 5 o'clock, he is like going downhill. So,
Yeah, no.
the timing, there's no flexibility on timing anymore. That's probably the biggest one. Yeah, I mean, we always did start with the family meals, but now I really try and get in there and sit down. Even if I can sit down with them for lunch, it's great when I can. Yeah, and then also there are gone the days of like, sometimes it'd be like, oh, we're just gonna like kind of, not do a full meal tonight. But now I really do try and have something. Although I will say every now and then I'll do like once a month on Sundays, like a snack board where it's just kind of like chopped up different things, whatever is left in the fridge. And it's funny that that's like my kid's favorite meal of the week.
Almost like a crudité or
Yeah.
yeah, like that kind of thing. Yeah, that's cool. Because even as a parent, I found that I'm just like, yeah, to your point, I'm not cooking as many gourmet food meals anymore. I'm just kind of like following kind of formulas. It's like, okay, it needs a protein, it needs a veg, and it needs some kind of like starch or something. If that's what we're eating, and we just like build it that way. Are you finding that like, are your kids, I know the oldest is 6, you said, right?
Mhm.
And then it goes down in age from there, but are you dealing with picky eating yet? And if so, how are you coping with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely see it. It's interesting because from what I've observed with my kids, I don't have any true like what I would call picky eaters by any means. I've noticed when it happens, it's more like a developmental change of like, I want to be able to like say this and have you listen. Like, oh, I don't want this tonight. And I'm like, but he's had that like several times before. And so I'm just like, okay. And kind of, I mean, not ignore the behavior, more like acknowledge it. It's usually when they're saying it, I don't even know for my one that says it, it's usually not like a true, I don't like this. It's more like, I want to be able to have this opinion and you listen to it. The one thing I have changed is I don't always, like if I'm going to do a pasta dish or like something where everything's mixed together, I will sometimes separate out the ingredients because I find it's a little easier for them when like the ingredients are separate. So that's the one thing I have changed. Or like maybe the sauce is on the side, like if I have a chimichurri, I don't smother everything with it. I put it on the side. But yeah, I've really tried from the beginning, to always, just introduce them to everything early and often, and really work on my language around meal times and how we introduce foods. And of course, having them involved in the kitchen. And man, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And I'd love to even dive in more into family meals around the table because that is so important. Are there Do you have any tips for people of how they can, like, let's say they are struggling to kind of get the family together or to establish routine dinners? Do you have any tips for how someone might go around and start to co-create that in their family?
Yeah, gosh, so much. One, having a plan for the week is good because you can step back, kind of know what you're going to have each night. So at least, because if you're going into it frazzled, it's going to make it that much harder. Like you need to be able to go into mealtime. This is what we're having, and at this time, and that way you've already set the tone for like we're not going to ask questions about this. Like this is what's happening. But yeah, the more you can get them involved, the better. I like to, gosh, know kind of the meals that work. Like there might be a meal where you're just like, oh, tonight I'm like so tight on time and it's going to be frustrating. But as much as possible, I get my kids in there and give them tasks and let them help out. And it just gets everyone on board with kind of the whole cycle of diving into mealtime. And gosh, so much so my 6-year-old recently came to me and told me he was going to make every meal for me. And if I wanted to sleep while he cooked, I could. So you can tell what I prioritize. He's like, if you want to sleep, I can cook.
He's already
He's like, from now on, like every meal, I just need to sleep at every dinner preparation time. I'm
That's hilarious, but he's already exhibiting, how you talked about yourself when you were younger, how, yeah,
yeah.
like, I'm going to start taking over the cooking. He's exhibiting those characteristics.
Yeah, we've had to have talks about that because he'll want to just like come up with something new to create on his own. And I'm like, okay, we can do this. And I've told him, I've even said, you remind me of me, and this is great, but we can't just, 10 minutes before dinner, create a whole new dish. I'm like, if you want to create something, let's meet at the beginning of the day and decide like when and where and how it's going to work. And, but yeah, he loves, and so we have a garden this year, and that's been a really good because they'll go into the garden. They love to pick things out of there. And then, if an herb came from the garden, all of a sudden they want to try it. But if it just shows up on their plate, they're like, I'm not touching this.
Oh, okay. So help
Yeah.
maybe establishing some kind of garden, whether it's an urban one or in the back, uh,
Yeah.
in really helping them to see the food growing. You're finding that inspires them to actually eat it too.
Yeah. Well, and the other day I brought in his zucchini from the garden, and before he could even say anything, my 4-year-old was peeling it, and we cut it up and sauteed it. And I'm telling you, I don't usually peel my zucchini. I don't know why I don't peel my zucchini. It was so much better peeled. I enjoyed, the sauteed. I think roasted it's fine, but sauteed zucchini, that's my new hack, courtesy of my 4-year-old. Peel your zucchinis before you saute them.
Do you have any rituals around the table? Do you do prayer or do you have any, like, I know you sent your oldest to a Waldorf school. Do you do any Waldorf songs or anything like that?
Yep. So we do a prayer before, and we vary like sometimes like it's into an argument, but who gets to say the prayer. If everyone joins in. But yeah, we have some of the Waldorf great ones that we do, and then we're Christians, so we sometimes will do more of a Christian one. And then one thing they do at Waldorf, it's the teachers that serve, but of course now he comes home and he wants to serve. So sometimes we'll have dinners where the kids will serve, and they love that. But again, we kind of have to, okay, we can't do that every meal because it's a process. But I mean, it's so funny watching them imitate what they've learned, because everyone has to stay seated, and then he gets to call everyone to come up one by one, and he serves them, and then we have to like light our candle if we want seconds, and he'll serve seconds for us.
Oh, wow. Now, I want to talk a bit about your company, but before we go into what people would experience with their company, if someone's not using your company, how would you recommend they get started with meal planning? Like, what can they use just that's around the house, or what steps would you recommend they take with what they already have?
The number one thing is just, and I know it kind of sounds redundant, but like have a plan, and do it in advance, right? Like either Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, look at your calendar for the week, jot down an idea of what you're going to have for dinner each night. And you can do all the meals, but dinner's usually the one to start with. It's just having an idea of what you're going to have for dinner each night will get you on the right track. Even if it changes, at least that sets you up to, one, be able to write a grocery list, buy the groceries. And then when you get to that time of day, if it's already written out, it's just like having that one less thing to think about makes a huge difference. Because if you're sitting there at 5 o'clock, I mean, this is the biggest, I think, hiccup to healthy eating is at 5 o'clock being like, oh my goodness, what are we going to eat? That's the hardest time to try and think of something healthy, and that's the easiest time to try and to decide, oh, maybe we'll just like DoorDash, or whatever it is. So the more you can have that plan and have some intentionality of how the week is going to go, the more likely you're at least going to stick to it and a portion of it.
Yeah. So let's walk them through what they could do. So if they're maybe starting that process on a Friday,
Yep.
what do you recommend they do? Are they looking at whatever cookbooks they have, or are like what's their thought process you recommend they have?
Yeah, I'll tell you some of the things we think about when we create our meal plans. So at Prep Dish, one, first, again, the calendar. So write out how many meals. You may be surprised, like, oh, we have 3 events next week. I'm not going to buy, like we're not even eating at home, or we're eating at, family's house this night, whatever it is. So make sure you know how many meals you actually need. So you're, planning for the right number. So start with the calendar. But yeah, then from there, I look at it as protein, carb, vegetable. And the carb can be a vegetable as well. It just kind of depends. So that's kind of the first thing I think about. I like to switch up my proteins throughout the week. So, beef, a seafood. And then from there you can like chicken, pork, kind of whatever it is, but kind of switch things up. Although sometimes I'll do something like, a big roast at the beginning of the week and then use those leftovers. So once you kind of look at it, are there places where you can do things like that? Like, can I double up on my chicken thighs and the next night have them on a salad and the first night just have them like a different way, So figuring out that, or same thing with like sauces, I'll do that a lot. Like, okay, I'm going to make a chimichurri and have it over salmon on Monday. And again, with flank steak on Wednesday. So it feels like a different meal, but making chimichurri, like a double batch of chimichurri, doesn't take that much longer. So, just really kind of looking at the week so you can have this more holistic view of like what you're going to have. And in terms of, finding the recipes, gosh, we have a recipe creator and meal plan editor. She's also a chef and dietitian by background. Her background is more Mediterranean diet, but we will brainstorm, and we actually look at our meals 3 months at a time. So we'll plan 3 months at a time, just to make sure we get the right variety of not only flavors, but just ingredients, and are they seasonal? So there's a lot of little like nuances that you can add to it. But again, in the beginning, maybe it's like, okay, what are the 4 recipes that are really easy for me, that aren't going to make me stumble at 5 o'clock, that I know my family's going to eat, and start there, start with the really basic ones. And then as you get into it, then you can add on in more of the nuances. And maybe this week we'll try a pesto sauce or something.
Do you find that there's a time frame for repetition? Like, do people really need a different, meal plan 30 days of the month? Or do you find it's actually practical to just have like 7 and just keep repeating that 7, or mixing, matching that 7? What do you recommend?
I find this is a personal preference, and I haven't quite figured it out. I mean, I've heard some people say, I won't even eat leftovers. We wouldn't eat lunch if we didn't have leftovers. Like, lunch is always leftovers. Then, but then there's other people, and it's like, okay, Tuesday's always tacos, and Wednesday's always stir fry, and Friday's always this. And it's like maybe they vary the ingredients. And I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't sound all bad, but I personally like a little more variety, and I enjoy. So, and I also think, are you a live to eat kind of person or an eat to live kind of person? That can make a difference. I really enjoy, trying out new foods, and there's something to be said even with the nutrition aspect of like having a variety of flavors and incorporating a variety of different foods is going to be, helpful from that aspect. But yeah, in terms of what's the right balance, I think it's figuring out your family and like who has the strong preference. Sometimes there's one spouse that like really wants more variety, and sometimes there's people honestly that prefer less variety. They'd rather kind of have the same thing every week. And so it's just figuring out where you guys are as a family, I think.
And what does prep dish? So we kind of laid out a lot of different things people
Yeah.
have to think about on when they're on their own. So what does prep dish provide for people?
So we, when it comes to variety, we do, if you want variety, we can help. But we do try and keep in mind that when subscribers are hitting us, some might be brand new or some have been with us for years. So we, are always doing tried and true in terms of like ingredients, or approachable, I should say. But we provide meal plans each week. So we're giving a grocery list, meal prep instructions, and then night of instructions. So basically taking that meal planning process I talked about earlier, but having it be done for you. Like, hey, if you want, someone to plan out nutritionally nutritionally balanced meals with a variety of flavors that, we feed our own families and just kind of hand you the instructions, then, that's basically what we provide.
And are people picking the diet that they want, or are they all fitting a specific diet?
So we have 4 different options to choose from. So one is paleo, one is gluten-free, and then there's a low-carb one and a super fast, which is just family friendly, but like really, trying to lean into the, okay, can you do one? So actually our goal with that is 1 hour of meal prep or less to get you prepped for the week in terms of your meals.
Mm.
Yeah.
And do you find that, just out of curiosity, do you find one is more popular than the other? Like, how are most people eating these days?
So super fast is the most popular. And we do yearly surveys. And because I've wondered that too, I'm like, okay, is it time to like cut one of them out? Because I think like 60% of and some people switch between them. I know for sure there's some of that. But like 60% use super fast, but the other 3, it's split so evenly. So I can't really drop any of them because they're all being used, and especially the paleo one, I've tried to figure out if I need to change the name on that or anything. But I think for the people that are looking for, if they need grain-free for, some sort of health reason, then they kind of know to look for that term, even though, I don't, it's not the same, in terms of trendiness or whatever as it was back when I started, several years ago. So.
And it sounds like you do incorporate seasons into the meal planning, correct?
Yes, yeah, for sure. And even like things like in the summer, we'll incorporate some grilled items, always with the option to use your stove. But the winter, there'll be like some hearty stews. I mean, we're not going to do that in July. We'll bring in more tomatoes in the summer and squash in the fall. And yeah, we're definitely like watching the seasons. And even over the holidays, we'll be like, oh, and here, 2 of the plans will give dessert options. And so we'll maybe do something like, oh, if you'd want to bring something to a Christmas party, here's a flourless chocolate cake you could make. So we're really kind of keeping an eye on the seasons.
But you're focusing mostly on dinner, correct?
Yeah. So dinner, the gluten-free and paleo are both set up where there's one salad that you make for the week. I really love having just one side salad I do for the whole week. And then there's a snack, breakfast, and dessert. But the way those work, everything's numbered. So if people want to make that, they can. But if not, they can just kind of ignore that number when they're going through the process.
Oh, but you are supporting people through their whole day of meals if they want.
Yeah, if they want. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. I'm curious, how do ancestral foods have any place in your meal plans, or have you built any into them?
What would the ancestral foods that you're...
Well, like, any more whole animal parts, so like organ meats, or even like bone broths or anything like that?
Not as much, mainly because sourcing them. I mean, I know I include them in my diet. So I'm a big fan of bone broth, and I make it a few times a month. And I do talk about that a lot. And like, okay, if you want to do it, here's how you do it. So when it comes up on a recipe though, we just call for broth and they can decide if they want to do store-bought. Broth is one for sure. That's kind of my personal one of like, oh, you should make your own broth. And then organ meats, I don't know that we've done as much with, and I'm trying to think other ancestral things, in terms of, I don't know, we talk about some of the, using more whole foods or like even things come up like, hey, I bought a whole cow. How can I swap this? And so we have those discussions with people, but more like to the side versus like as the main thing. So
How
I mean, I would love to incorporate some of that stuff. I think maybe that's not quite where my audience is though.
how granular do you get around preparation? Like, do you recommend people soak things? Do you go to that extent?
Um, yeah, yes and no. Like beans. So a lot of that stuff, again, we're kind of like in the area of like, we'll have either like blog posts or podcast episodes where we'll talk about like, hey, here's the like preparation and all that. But then on the meal plans, it's like, okay, if you want to get it done quickly, here's how you do it as well. So we've kind of had to find that balance of making it approachable, like I said, for the new customers, but then, people who've been with us for a while. And I know people on our like Facebook group, like maybe they belong to like a farm thing and they get something and they're looking for a substitution and stuff like that. So we try and support them wherever they're at on that side of things.
Yeah, I imagine most people that are coming to you are just are really looking for time hacks, right? Like things that will speed up the process and make it easy. Do you have any prep tricks that you can impart? Maybe 2 or 3 that you can impart to the people.
Yeah. So again, I think one, it gets back to that intentionality. When you are sitting down and like looking at your week and planning it, and when you're looking at recipes, see, are there some ways that I can make this week easier for me? So again, like making that big roast and using it for a few things, making a sauce and making it once. Like if you want to experiment with something new and some new flavors, don't do like 3 different sauces for that week. Do the same one for that week, and then next week try a new one. Batching your vegetable chopping is like one of my best hacks because there's just something about opening your fridge and having that onion already be chopped at dinner time that just makes dinner that much easier. I can chop an onion in like, I don't know, under 2 minutes, but it's so nice to just toss the pre-chopped onion, it's kind of like that, how they started the cake mixes. Like people are more likely to make a cake when all they have to do is add 3 ingredients versus 10. So I think if you can set yourself up to have dinner be a little easier by doing all of your chopping in advance, then you're going to enjoy it and be more likely to make it a habit.
Any preservation tips? Like, so when people bring in their groceries, are you a proponent of, do they take it out of the plastic bags? Like, how do you recommend they store it in their refrigerator?
It depends a lot on like per produce. I will say and so this is another thing, if you're creating your own meal plans, when we're doing ours, we are specifically looking at like, okay, day 4 or 5, what are you going to have versus day 1? So that is something we do take into account of like, okay, is that, salad really going to be good on that day? No, let's move it to this day. And let's save the thing that has like carrots in it for the last day. Same thing, like if you're getting some fish, not going to have that on day 3. Fish is always like our first one, just, to try and account for that. So, but yeah, and then in chopping the vegetables, most vegetables do pretty well. There's a few exceptions of things that don't last as long. We have gone back and forth on this and like done some experiments. We've talked about doing just this full blown like year-long experiment of chopping and seeing how long they last. Cause the problem is it varies a lot because you don't know if you're going to a grocery store, you don't know. I could buy a carrot that's, 2 weeks older than the carrot that you buy. Or same thing, like I get a head of broccoli and it's already like not looking great, whereas someone else gets a broccoli and it lasts 2 more weeks in their fridge. So I can have some generalizations, but you don't know the produce that you're buying, how old it is, unless you're picking it out of your garden.
Should they store certain produce specifically? Like, should asparagus be stored in a glass of water? How about herbs? Do you have any recommendations on those?
Herbs, I do like to store just in a cup of water, like standing up. I find that helps. All the others, I don't really have a lot of strict guidelines on. There's things. Potatoes, I don't usually cut in advance. Those turn brown. I mean, those are not good meal prep things. The things you can do with potatoes, bake some potatoes and then, use them later. Salad, I always, even just as simple as like flipping it so it's upside down, it lasts longer. You know what I mean? If you flip the tub upside down, I think it's because it's been sitting upside for so long that it helps to flip it. So
Yeah, you obviously drain it first of the water, right, before you do that.
Yeah.
But that's smart, yeah, because you don't want to. The part that's been sitting is going to release more water and or turn brown faster. Yeah, that's a really good tip. Do you find any tips for when people are cutting onions, like so they don't get the teary eyes?
If you stick them in the thing I found that works best, stick it in the fridge before you chop it, at least an hour before you chop it, and that helps to reduce it. I'm a big crier with onions. Like, I really struggle. I don't know what that gene or chemical is, but whatever it is, I've got it really bad.
Get out the stored, emotions whenever you're cutting the onions. What about cookware wise? Are you a stainless steel girl or cast iron? What's your favorite cookware?
Those two. I do cast iron and stainless steel. Very well, this is controversial, but not into the air fryers. There's not one that has great materials. Actually, I did buy one that's like made of glass, but it didn't really work that well. But yeah, stainless steel and cast iron.
Any appliances that you think are a non-negotiable?
I think having at least a high-end blender or food processor, both is great, but you need to have at least one of those to make like sauces and stuff. That's the main one. I'm trying to think. I mean, so my biggest thing in terms of what you need to have, high quality, like a chef's knife, a really good chef's knife. It's probably going to cost you at least $100, $80 to $100. But that's important to have. And then a really good cutting board as well. Like, it needs to be a decent size and not plastic or glass. Like, it can be made of bamboo or wood of some sort, but no glass or plastic for the cutting boards, and a big size.
Yeah, nice. Do you wear an apron when you're cooking, or do you not wear an apron?
I should wear an apron. I do not. Every now and then I do, like if I'm doing like a big baking session, or it's like, Thanksgiving Day, sometimes I'll put one on if I know like it's, and depending on what I'm wearing and all that sort of, maybe if I'm hosting people, then I'll wear one, but no, not usually.
Yeah, I'm notorious for not wearing them, and then of course
Uh,
my clothes get stained.
I know the oil stains are the worst. That's where I'm like, I should wear one, because when you get a little oil stains on your shirt, those are really hard to
They
get
really
out.
are, but you know what? One thing that helps, this is a crazy tip, but you actually use like Dawn dish soap because it's designed to help pull oil.
Yeah.
So you actually put it on the oil spot, and then you rub it in, and then put it in your washer, and it usually will come out just like it does
Okay.
on your cookware. Isn't it
I might
interesting?
need to. I have a few shirts that I have in mind that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating. Um, any other kind of trying to think, because I always get asked these questions, and rarely do I get to ask someone else these culinary tips. Um, well, let me start here. What do you listen to when you're cooking, or do you listen to anything?
I used to, but now my kids are always in the kitchen with me. So I find that if there's already the noise of kids, I used to listen more to like podcasts and stuff. And I also find like in the mornings I like listening to music. So like Saturday morning breakfast I do. I think the afternoon, because I'm so tapped out, I prefer more quiet than like even music or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't listen to much. But conversation with my kids, like I've learned now, kind of like 4 to 5 is time to spend with my kids. So I've started to view it as that, because I think for me in the past I was like, oh, I need to make dinner at this time, and then it was like me making dinner and then wanting my attention. So now I'm like, okay, I know I can get dinner prepared in this time frame, but I've really shifted my mindset of like, this is me spending time with my kids, and we just happen to get dinner made like together. And that's helped a lot with my patience.
Yes, that's such a good one. I went through that as well. When I had that other kind of get it done mindset,
Mhm.
I would get so frustrated, and yet that was exactly the wrong thing to do, because you want your kids to be, to your point earlier, you want your kids to be involved with the cooking. You want them to be curious about these things. And once I changed my mindset of like, no, this is quality time, and this is just what we're doing with that time. And yes,
Yeah, and
everything went slower, but
yes.
but it was so much healthier for me mindset wise. So that's really encouraging that you felt that too.
Yeah, and I've learned to just really pause and be like, when I try and like tell them they can't do something in the kitchen and be like, but why not, before I say no to something. And I've been amazed at how capable they are of doing things. My 6-year-old, he's on the stove cooking eggs by himself. He does things in the oven by himself. My 4-year-old is like really good with a knife. Like, and both of them can like chop a sweet potato. And it's a little terrifying at first, but I've monitored them enough and watched them enough that I know I'm confident in their skills. They're confident in their skills. And yeah, they're just capable of a lot more than I think I initially would have thought. And just by kind of biting my tongue and sitting back and being patient, it's like, oh, wow, they can actually help out.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you mentioned that you're going to be entering homeschooling next year for the kids.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, how are you preparing, to run your business, to still be a mom of 4 kids, and then to homeschool? I'm assuming, are you going to be running the homeschool, or is your husband?
So I'm going to be running the homeschool. We've always worked with au pairs. So we do have some help in the house. So that's good, especially with the young, so we have age-wise, it's 6, 4, the 4-year-old's almost 5, and then an 18-month-old and a 2-month-old. So being able to have someone else that's focusing on the 2 little ones is going to be helpful. And then I can do the homeschooling. And then the thing that I found, because even this year when the boys had school 4 days a week, when they were home, it was like they're actually quite helpful, like with the little ones. It's like they can entertain the 18-month-old in a way that, like, if they're not home, you don't have that. So I'm really excited to see us just kind of come together as a family and like function as a whole. But yeah, I mean, we have the childcare too. So when I work, like, I'm very separate from them. I try not to work as much in front of them. It's like, okay, I'm going to leave the room and go and have my work time and then like come back. Of course, like if it's something in the kitchen or, there's certain things, but for the most part, it's a separate task.
Well, I wish you well with it. It's not easy running a business and being a parent. So kudos to you for choosing this path. But I'm excited to hear how it goes for you with homeschooling as well. But I so admire the effort and the decision, because I believe very firmly, after having not homeschooled and after having a household of 2 parents that are entrepreneurs, that I really do believe having one parent actually run the household and kind of be present with the kids and the family and helping to build that kind of that safe space in the home is more powerful and more important than I think we give it credit for. Because I feel like that's been our downfall a bit, is because we've been so focused on our businesses sometimes, and our kids would see us working and they would think, well, you're always working, not knowing, of course, that, well, this is how all parents that have jobs are doing it. You just don't see them.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's confused them over the years, and we've had to really do a lot of repair work around that, and kind of like re-clarifying what work is and how good they have it that we're actually around all the time, and because we both work from home as well. But I do wish that one of us could have homeschooled or just really been in charge of the business, the home business, instead of just always focusing outside of the home.
Yeah, no, it's so much to figure out, this I've tried to read a lot of books since having kids on that whole thing. And because it's like your home is this whole business that needs to run. There's this whole like home management. I even had someone on my podcast, and she has, I think, 11 kids and homeschooled. And she talked about because it's so much like systems. So it's like, okay, what systems do we need to have into place? What are the rhythms? How do we run? And going back to the meal plan thing, it's like, you've just got to be intentional with that. Like, if you don't like something, you've got to figure out why is it not working, and then go back and figure out the solution. But so much of that can be figured out. You just have to give yourself the space and time to do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear how it goes for you. I mean, clearly you're not going to just be doing that. You'll also be running your business, but it sounds like you're going to do like an off split, something like a 70-30 or 60-40 or something, right? Like you're going to
Yeah, no, I've been very intentional with the business is more like, kind of 20 hours a week or less, depending on what we're going through. And I have a great team behind me of people at Prep Dish who have been with me for years. And that's the culture that I've created is like basically everyone on the team is a mom. So, we all value that. We all know that like, families first but we're all passionate about Prep Dish. Like we feed our families these meals and so it's been kind of a cool journey to all, and they all have older kids, so it's nice they can kind of help guide me because here I'm with little ones.
Are you done at 4, or are you thinking you'll continue for?
Probably done at 4.
Okay, that's not 100%, but
It's not 100%.
it's just
Before
okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your gifts with our audience. We're gonna have links to Prep Dish, and how can people kind of learn more about you on socials and whatnot?
Yeah, so at Prep Dish on Instagram, I have a podcast, Meal Prep Monday. You're going to be a guest on there, so you can go check out that episode. And then we have a 2-week free trial set up, prepdish.com. I think it's prepdish.com/ancestral. So they can go there. I'll make sure that's set up and that can be in the show notes. But that's a good way to try out the meal plans. I even say after listening to this, if you want to just kind of see our system for 2 weeks and try it out, do that.
I hope everyone does. I really do, because like I said, I feel like meal planning is one of the most underrated and underused tools, but it truly does move the needle the most in my judgment.
Yeah.
Having that plan, knowing when and how the meals are going to get done, and not only does that keep you from eating out, which is not the healthiest choice because it's pretty impossible to be healthy when you eat out, but also, like you pointed out earlier, it creates a regularity so that the focus suddenly is less on what are we eating tonight, and it's more on, okay, this is what we're eating, this is the time we're eating, and now we get to focus on each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if anything, I would offer the Prep Dish helps families be with each other.
No, I mean, that's what I've come to believe as well is like, yes, I want to have nutritious meals and tasty meals and all this, but what I care about the most that I'm giving people is sitting down and having that connection with your family. And that is healthy, like, yes, nutritious, healthy, but also emotional and all of these other pieces that it takes to be holistically healthy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening or watching. If you like this episode, please leave a comment. It really does help us know what is resonating with you. And if you should so like to, please share with someone else and maybe leave a rating. These are the ways to communicate with us what you enjoy, and we will keep doing that. So stay curious. Thank you so much for joining me on Everyday Ancestral. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. You can find the show notes, links, and resources mentioned at eatpluck.com. That's eatpluck.com. And hey, if you know someone who'd get something out of this, share it with them too. Stay curious, live well, and keep it ancestral.